My subject this morning is, why do we cheat? It does say we. Why do we cheat? It's inspired by the news that Lance Armstrong cheated to win all 7 of his Tour de France titles. He's since been stripped of all of his victories. I saw someone posted a picture last night of a beautiful 3-year-old on a tricycle, his hands held high in the air in victory, and it said, "I've won just as many Tour de France's as Lance Armstrong." It shows how quickly he's gone from an American superhero, sports superstar, to the butt of many jokes and criticisms. Many people know Lance is the survivor of testicular cancer. It spread to his lungs and his brain. It had been quite advanced by the time they caught it, and he came very close to dying. His journey of survival and triumph has been one of the great stories in sports history, as he went from near death to being a 7-time cycling champion in the hardest, most grueling cycling event ever. He inspired millions of cancer patients and has been seen as really a hero to many. He was once considered one of the greatest athletes of all time. I even preached a sermon about him some years ago after he won his 4th title, and I went back and read this sermon a few days ago, and I have to say it was pretty hard to stomach now that I know that he was lying. One of the main points which I took from his autobiography was from his supposed philosophy of life that honest effort is a transformative experience. So much for honest effort. And I guess he's learned that dishonest effort is also a transformative experience. It's a lot more painful and destructive. Later in the sermon, I recounted that when Lance Armstrong was confronted with the possibility of his own death, he began to examine his faith, and he explained that he'd never prayed much, that he'd developed a healthy distrust of organized religion. It seemed to him that as long as he was a good person, fair, honest, honorable, hardworking, and gave back to his community, that was enough. In his words, at the end of the day, if there was indeed some body or presence standing there to judge me, I hoped that I would be judged on whether I had lived a true life, and not whether I believed in a certain book or whether I'd been baptized. Well, he apparently has failed on all 3 accounts. He doesn't believe in the book, he hasn't been baptized, and he has not been living a true life. So by his own theology, he's pretty much toast. He wrote, "I hope that I'll be judged by whether I've lived a true life, even as he was lying and conniving and deceiving everybody around him." In his autobiography, which is called "It's Not About the Bike," he wrote, "I learned what it means to ride the Tour de France. It's a metaphor for life. Not only the longest race in the world, but also the most exalting and heartbreaking and potentially tragic. It poses every conceivable element to the rider and more. Cold, heat, mountains, plains, ruts, flat tires, high winds, unspeakable bad luck, unthinkable beauty, yawning senselessness, and above all, a great, deep self-questioning. The Tour is not just a bike race, not at all. He said, it's a test. It tests you physically, it tests you mentally, and it even tests you morally. By his own admission, Lance failed the moral test of the Tour de France. And as he said, it's a metaphor for life. He's also failed the moral test of life, at least to this point in his life. He seems to be trying now to clean up his act. He went on Oprah last week, admitted what he's been doing, now that he can no longer keep up the lies. But until last week, he was defiant, he was arrogant and deceptive. In his book, Lance said emphatically, I am not on drugs. And he even acted like a victim. He wrote about how prior to his admission, he talked to the press and he wrote in his book, I was hurt and I was demoralized by the constant barrage and suspicion from the press. I put forth such effort and had paid such a high price to ride again, and now that effort was being devalued by questions that I was cheating. He wrote, I tried to deal with the reports honestly. Apparently he didn't try hard enough. He wrote this knowing all too well he was lying. He goes on in his book to compare those who said it was impossible for him to be doing what he was doing without doping to people who told him that he would never survive cancer. He called them naysayers and negative Nancys and some other really bad and much worse things. He ruined some people's lives and their careers. Why did he do it? Why do any of us do things that we're not proud of? For one thing, he said almost everyone was doing it. If everyone is cheating, then is anybody really cheating? That's, of course, a morally spurious rationalization. When a child comes home from school having been caught cheating on an exam, tells his parents, well, everybody was doing it. That's not any excuse. That doesn't keep anybody from the consequences. But that's one of the reasons we cheat, though, is that we convince ourselves, we rationalize that it's normal. It's just what everybody does. People convince themselves everyone cheats on their taxes a little bit, a little bit to save a little money here and there. Or people pad their expense account and say, everybody does it. Or we hear people who cheat on their spouses rationalize it, saying things like, there's a reason why it's one of the cheating is one of the biggest causes of marital distress, because nearly everybody's doing it. Men will say, well, it's practically normal in France. We just live in this Puritan country here in America. There's no end to the rationalizations that people will make in order to get what they want. And everyone's doing it is so seductive because it helps people feel okay about themselves when what they're doing is not okay. There's a reason we don't accept that excuse from our children, because it's not morally persuasive and we all know it. One of the things I read about Lance in his autobiography that was true is that his father abandoned him before he was 2 years old. One of the reasons people cheat is that they're trying to compensate for something that's missing in their life. Lance did not have a father to tell him that he mattered, that I approve of you, that I love you. Have you ever done something to be accepted? One of the main reasons we cheat is to try to compensate for something that we feel we didn't have or that we lack, that we deserve. Lance admitted in his interview with Oprah last week that he got caught up in it all. When he won his first tour, he was the pride of his country. He was admired around the world, and he had become a source of hope for everyone battling cancer. He started to believe his own hype. And since he'd gotten away with it, it seemed that he could continue to get away with it, and he did for a long time. Pretty soon, the first lie turned into a web of lies, and before long, his whole career was built on a foundation of deceit. I heard someone say the other day, he was not only a master in riding a bicycle, he was a master in riding a lie cycle. It starts with one lie, and then that leads to another lie, which leads to the next lie, which leads to a whole cycle of lies. And pretty soon it's getting going so fast that there's no way to get off until you crash into something. It's also about control. Lance said that when he had cancer, it was the first time in his life that he felt like he couldn't control the outcome. It wasn't up to him. He had no power. And so he said after that, I wanted to control everything I possibly could for the rest of my life. He became determined. And cheating allowed him to control the outcomes of the races, and lying allowed him to control his reputation and his financial future. Part of the draw of cheating is feeling in control. I don't have to play by anyone else's rules. I make up my own rules. I'm in charge. These are three major reasons why people cheat. We convince ourselves that everyone is doing it, and therefore it's okay. We do it because we're trying to compensate for something that we didn't get. And in some ways, we are looking for love in all the wrong places. And to feel in control. In a world that is filled with uncertainty, cheating can sometimes make people feel like they are the master of their own universe. There's an expression that cheaters never prosper. And maybe that's true, but the truth is cheaters do often win, at least in the short term. But cheating takes an incredible toll. It makes us guilty. It compels us to cover our tracks. It tears us apart inside as we look at ourselves and don't much like what we see. Even if in the short term, cheating does get us what we think we want, the damage in the long term is much worse. In the long run, cheaters often lose because the more you ride the lie cycle, or the longer you ride the lie cycle, the more likely you are to crash. And it takes a lot of energy to keep up a whole bed of lies. We all know this on some level because one thing that is certainly true is that none of us is a saint. There's no getting around that. I'm certainly not. And if we have a conscience at all, there are times when these things get to us and we wish that we could rid ourselves of the burden. I don't just mean the big transgressions. Of course, those things eat away at us. I also mean the smaller ones, the times we took credit for something that we didn't deserve, or the time we blamed someone when we knew very well it wasn't their fault, it was ours. The time we were cowardly and did not do something that we knew we should do, or say something that we knew we should say, or the time that we did something that we knew we shouldn't. The small deceptions, often an initial lie out of fear of being exposed, or when we became so concerned about ourselves that we forgot about our concern for others. These things eat away at us and eventually alienate us from ourselves. They alienate us from one another, and they ultimately alienate us from the ground of our being, from God, if you will. And there's only one sure escape from the transgressions that we all bear, and that is forgiveness, which is one of the most powerful forms of grace. I've been thinking about this a lot since I saw a headline that said, Lance Armstrong disgraced. As you know, our theme this month is grace, and it made me wonder, can a person be disgraced? I know a person can be dismissed and disrobed and dishonored and discounted and disrespected, but can someone be disgraced? By which I mean become let go of by grace? I know people can be disgraceful, which means that their actions are the opposite of graceful. But is there anything that we can do that would deny us the gifts of grace? I've been saying all month that no matter what we've done or failed to do, nothing can disqualify us from receiving and being an agent of grace in the world. I'm reminded of one of the most challenging and hopeful parables in the Bible, the prodigal son, from the book of Luke, chapter 15. In it, there's a father who has two sons. The youngest son asks his dad for his inheritance early, and when the father gives it to him, he runs off and he wastes it on drinking and prostitutes and all kinds of wild living. He has disgraced his family, disgraced himself, and He has squandered his father's hard-earned inheritance. When he finally finds himself picking up the scraps left by pigs, he decides that he'd be better off going back to his father and just asking him to take him back as a hired hand, not as his son anymore. He doesn't deserve that, but at least let him come back and work for minimum wage and no special treatment. When his father sees that he's come back and he's walking his way up towards the house, instead of shunning him, the father runs out to him, throws his arms around him, and calls for the others to bring a cloak and a ring. And he has them kill the fattened calf because he was going to throw a party. His son was lost, and now he's found. The father in the parable is meant to represent God. This God is not the punishing, wrathful God of many parts of the Bible. Luke, by the way, was the first universalist. This is a God who, no matter what a person has done, will celebrate the day when that person turns away from their mistakes and transgressions and steps back on the road of health and wholeness. The message is clear. As long as we are alive and conscious, nothing we do can disqualify us from receiving grace or from being agents of grace and forgiveness for others. One thing seems for sure. Lance Armstrong, the brand, the superhero, the sporting demigod, is done, is gone forever. But Lance, the person, still has much to offer, still has much to receive. He's lost and he's failed most of the big and important races of his life to this point. He's lied, he's bullied, he's cheated, he's been exposed as a phony, but he's not yet failed the most important race. For most of us, it's not a question of will we fail, will we make a mistake, will we have regrets, will we hurt ourselves and others. It's not likely we'll do it on such a big stage as Lance. But the question is, what do we do once we've fallen? Do we get back up? And when we get back up, do we stay on the same course or do we change courses? And how do we find forgiveness? How do we ever find forgiveness, especially to be able to forgive ourselves? The first step on the road to forgiveness is to admit that what we've done, to admit to ourselves and to others, I'm a cheat, a phony, I'm an alcoholic, I'm an addict, I've been dishonest, I'm a liar, I'm a thief, I'm an abuser, an embezzler, whatever. That's the beginning of the process to regain integrity, to sew back together the torn pieces that are within us and around us and the destruction that we've created in our wake. Some people think that that's enough, but that's what we call cheap grace. That's not real grace. That's cheap grace. Sometimes some people say, I admitted it, I said I was sorry, why can't you forgive me? Because it's not that easy. Because that's not a real apology. There are 3 parts to an authentic apology. And I've been here 13 years, and I've said many things from this pulpit, and maybe the most significant is what I'm about to say, how to offer a real and authentic apology. The first step, of course, is to say, I did it, and I'm sorry. Second is to express remorse or shame or embarrassment or whatever feelings we have for what we've done. And third, we have to ask, what can I do to repay or make amends? If that's even possible. An apology is not complete without all 3 of these being done. I'm sorry. I'm embarrassed. What can I do to regain your trust, to make it up to you? Lance has taken the first step by admitting what he's done. Based on the Oprah interview, though, he didn't show very much emotion If he feels remorse, we didn't get to see very much of it. He has yet to go back to the people he harmed to make real amends. In his case, that'll probably happen in the courts as people sue him for having ruined their careers and their lives. Lance never had a father who told him he matters, that told him he approves of him and that he's loved. In many ways, we all long to know we matter and are lovable. And sometimes we find that we'll do just about anything to get this recognition. We may feel we have to get all A's or get into the best schools, or we may feel that we need to make a lot of money in order to prove our worth, or live in a big house, or drive an expensive car, or have the latest fashion. The problem is that when we cheat or we lie or we place our self-worth in the hands of external, superficial, and material things, all we've done is built it on a foundation of sand. To know grace is to know that no matter who you are, no matter how flawed you might feel you are lovable and you matter. Everybody matters. And it's never too late to start again. One of the greatest gifts I ever received was when I developed a relationship with someone as an adult with whom I eventually built the kind of trust to be able to share everything about me. I even shared secrets that I had held in my life for a long, long time. I'll spare you the details this morning. But I laid it all on the line, the good, the bad, and the pretty ugly. And you know what this person did? This person accepted me, continued to love me, and told me I mattered. That was grace. Some people say grace and forgiveness can only come from God. To which I say, anytime someone experiences authentic forgiveness, it is a holy moment. In other words, where there is forgiveness, God is. Sometimes we need to forgive ourselves, which is a lot easier said than done, and especially when there's no one left to forgive us, or when we're not, or when those who are left are not willing to forgive us even after we've done everything we could to try to make amends. We sometimes need to learn to forgive ourselves. And when we come to that place of acceptance, that level of self-acceptance of ourselves despite all our flaws and folly, that too is holy. That's why to say that a person cannot forgive themselves, that only God can forgive, is to misunderstand the ways of grace and God. Whenever there's a feeling and an expression of authentic forgiveness, it is holy. And we can do that for one another and for ourselves. Forgiveness is a sacred act. I hope Lance Armstrong experiences grace and forgiveness. Now that Lance the superhero is gone, I hope that he discovers the true hero inside that's been there all along. Admission alone, in his case, is not enough, and I hope he doesn't jump to easy grace. I've said I was sorry. I told Oprah. Let's move on. That's not very lasting. That's not very real. But even though he's been a phony, a liar, a cheater, and a bully, despite it all, in the rest of his life, he can become a powerful vessel of goodness and blessings. He was lost in a web of lies, and now he's been found out. If he lets himself be humbled and truly changes his course, he can become a great source of hope and strength once again, not just for cancer survivors, but for people who learn how to fall from grace and get back up in dignity. The acceptance and nobility that he was seeking by cheating and deception was really there all along. May he find it now on a foundation that's real, on a foundation of truth. He's taken a big step towards recovery and reconciliation and forgiveness. And we can and need to do the same when it comes to any lies that we've been living. It's a big burden off one's back to get off that lie cycle. May you know love and grace and forgiveness in your life today and always. In fact, that's what it means to be a church that loves beyond belief. It means that, like the prodigal father, we tell everyone they are included in God's love. We don't say you have to believe in this or that to be included. We don't say that you have to have lived a virtuous or wholesome life to be included. We don't say that you have to be a paramount of integrity or the smartest in your class. We don't say if you are a recovering racist, sexist, or homophobe, you need not apply. Because we know your prejudice won't last long if you spend much time in this place. And if you've cheated, lied, used, or abused, we don't say keep on walking. We say come join us on this quest of love and truth. Because love will conquer all, and the truth shall set us free. I love you. Amen.